some of the ODOT employees would be sitting around at the lunch table talking about these missing girls because the family was putting flyers up, and Aykroyd would walk by and say, oh yeah, they're trying to blame those murders on me. Well, one, they're not even murders yet. And secondly, why are you putting yourself into it? Yeah, I picked him up, or trying to blame it on me. It was like trying to build his alibi ahead of time.
When we started this, I thought for sure there's no way it couldn't be two people. But I do think he's a big guy. He'd done it before. You know, he may have even told them, you know, you need to squeeze into the back of the van. And once you shove one of them in and grab the other and slam the door,
they're trapped.
Yeah.
SHEILA and Kay Turner were the only people that John had been around disappeared.
He worked for ODOT. They were working on Highway 20 a lot back then.
Too many people disappear in that area. Just too much of a coincidence.
We know that John Aykroyd was working in Newport when those girls disappeared.
He comes in way late at night. He's got blood all over his hands.
It was a right picking for someone who is a predator to be in an area where there's a bunch of sheep.
I know this road like the back of my hand. Same with the stations, only FM band. Farms and truck stops, fireworks stands. Yeah, I know this road like the back of my hand.
In 1992, investigators were closing in on John Aykroyd, working the cases of both Kay Turner, who had vanished while running in 1978, and Richanda Pickle, Aykroyd's 13-year-old stepdaughter, who had disappeared in 1990. Aykroyd was the last person known to have seen either one of them alive. But those weren't the only killings along Highway 20 that cast suspicion on Aykroyd.
I am totally innocent, and I'll say that till the day I die.
What about the other ones?
What other ones?
The other ones.
What you talking about?
Talking about some other people that are dead up in that area.
Oh, now you're trying to lay some others on me.
From the late 70s to the early 90s, Highway 20 between Bend and Newport was John Aykroyd's domain. He roamed the twisting blacktop from behind the wheel of state highway rigs and his own truck, usually alone, a phantom, caught, if at all, as a fleeting blur in the peripheral vision of passing motorists. Aykroyd can account for some of his time. He repaired equipment, helped stranded drivers, and cleared wrecks. He hunted, fished, and visited friends. But he spent long stretches of time alone, and what he was doing then remains the subject of much speculation.
I was convinced early on that we were dealing with a serial killer. And if we really know the truth, I believe he's probably killed more people in Oregon than probably anybody else.
I'm totally convinced John is responsible for a lot more. In my career, I've dealt with serial killers before, and I've talked to them, and I've interviewed them. And I feel John fits in that category.
You wonder, was Aykroyd a serial killer? Well, I mean, he was, by definition, a serial killer. He killed two people, separated by time and space. 12 years between Kay and Richanda. What happened in between?
Who knows? There could have been, somebody before me, and we just don't know it. And how many do we don't know after that went missing? These are just the ones they know about.
In 2012, two investigators with the Lincoln County DA's office were working on a cold case from 20 years before. Two young women, Melissa Sanders and SHEILA Swanson, had disappeared in the spring of 1992 from a campground near Newport. Their bodies had been found several months later in the woods off Highway 20 near Eddyville. No arrests had ever been made. The investigators received a tip from a defense attorney in Bend. He suggested they take a look at someone whose name had come up at the time of the killings, but who had never been questioned. John Arthur Ackroyd.
Melissa lived in Sweet Home. Sheila lived in Lebanon. They were friends. They had planned to go camping with Melissa's family. So they drove over middle of the day, got to the beach in the afternoon, and had supper that night. Everybody went to sleep. And the next morning, the parents and grandparents woke up and the girls were gone.
We didn't hear anything for like a week, wondering what happened and stuff like that. Why didn't she back? Melissa's mom and dad came over and said they didn't bring my sister back because they supposedly supposed to have been hitchhiking back. Talked to the Lebanon Police Department about it, and they pretty much blew it off like, yeah, that's just Sheila. She's just out running, doing what she wants to do type of deal.
The parents reported them missing after they'd been gone for about a week to 10 days. Not much came up until October of '92, when some hunters were hunting off Highway 20 and came across the bodies of 2 deceased people. And they were later identified as Melissa and Sheila.
Finding human remains along Highway 20 was nothing new over the years. In 1976, a skull belonging to an unidentified woman was found near Swamp Mountain. In 1978, the skull of another unidentified woman was found near Snow Creek. Also in 1978, the body of Elizabeth Musler, a young woman who had disappeared from Lebanon, was found in a shallow grave near Green Peter Reservoir. A year before that, personal effects belonging to 2 missing teenagers, Rodney Grissom and Karen Lee, had been found off a logging road near Highway 20, about a half-hour east of Sweet Home. Nothing beyond circumstance ever linked Ackroyd to any of these deaths, but circumstance is enough for Karen's mother, Violet, who is convinced he was her daughter's killer.
The last I heard was she'd called her friend in Wisconsin, and she said to her, "Our ride's here, I have to go." Then the next thing I know, it's Christmas and they find her stuff.
And this is where they found the first set of clothes. We brought up cadaver dogs, and we worked this area for a long time, just hoping we would find some human remains, and we never did.
You know, when they found her stuff, it was like, it was her purse, it was her makeup, it was everything she wouldn't have gone on without. And one shoe, where's she gonna go with one shoe? She couldn't have gotten out of there with one shoe.
You do have this cluster of cases in the area. A detective wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't look into Ackroyd's involvement in those cases, because it just made sense.
It was just a feeling that I had, that this guy had something to do with it. He lived near there. He worked in those areas, so he knew back roads, he knew, he worked for the highway department. I feel in here that that's what happened to her.
Karen's jeans appeared to have been cut, echoing Marlene Gabrielson's rape, which occurred around the same time. It's impossible to know if the same clue would have turned up in Ackroyd's stepdaughter's killing, since no trace of Rachanda was ever found. But the same year that Sheila and Melissa went missing, Rachanda's cousin Jennifer thought Ackroyd might have taken her to the spot where he stashed her body.
John came up every weekend. I asked him if I could get a ride from him to my friend's house. And he said, yeah. We were going on Highway 20 towards Sweet Home. We passed the junction. Usually if he needs anything, he stops there at the junction where he lives and picks up whatever he needs. He passed it. And he pulled off alongside the road, and he turns to me and he looks at me and he says, you could kill somebody and hide a body here and nobody would ever find it. And something inside me told me not to get out of the truck. And so he's like, I gotta pee, do you need to go? I was like, no, I'm good. He got out of the truck and he was gone for about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. And I thought, that's an awful long time to go pee.
Looking back on that now, what do you think that was about?
Oh God, I think he was trying to make sure that he disposed of the body I think that he wanted to make sure nobody found it at that point. And it freaked me out because I was 16 years old, you know? Why would an adult tell a 16-year-old that? You know, and that was like 2 years after my cousin came up missing.
To some of his coworkers at Santiam Junction, it seemed obvious that Aykroyd was responsible for his stepdaughter's disappearance. With the continuing investigation becoming a distraction and some workers not feeling safe around him, the highway department eventually transferred Aykroyd to a shop in Sweet Home, where his reputation preceded him.
My first time that I went to Santiam Junction was somewhere around 1979, winter of 79 or 80. This guy came out from behind a truck and said, "Hey, I'm John," reached out. When he touched my hand, I literally froze up and thought to myself, oh my God, I just met the devil. After Richandra disappeared, and there'd been a number of investigations, the district manager came to me and said, "We're going to reassign John Aykroyd to your shop." And I said, "No, I don't need him at my shop." And they said, "You don't understand. You don't have a choice. And he's not going to be working out of your shop. He's just going to be parking his truck there morning and night. And he's going to be driving wherever every day." At least at Santiam Junction, he had oversight. He did not have oversight once they moved him to District 4. He comes here and gets in a truck and leaves. None of us really know where he is or where he's going. It's like, wow, what are you guys thinking? And I'm sure there's more than, in hindsight, they realized they probably made a large error.
By the time Aykroyd was transferred from Santiam Junction, he and Linda had split up. He moved in with his mother in Sweet Home, near the shop where he was now based. He soon began spending evenings in nearby Lebanon at a Sherry's restaurant, a popular 24-hour gathering spot for locals.
The young people from Sweet Home, the teenagers from Sweet Home in Lebanon, would hang out at the Sherry's. Melissa and Sheila started hanging out with that group 2 to 3 months before. We start talking to this one couple who actually remembered things very, very well given the amount of time that went by. They started talking about this guy, John, that worked for ODOT, that also kind of hung around on the fringes of this group, and that he was really, really interested in Melissa and Sheila, that whenever they would arrive, he would make a beeline for them and interact with them.
He was here a lot. He used to give a bunch of the girls rides. The perv, that's what we called him, short for pervert. That was his CB handle. And then we called him the perv because it just fit him better.
By all accounts, Sheila and Melissa were there most nights, and Aykroyd was there most nights.
The girls start talking about taking this vacation to the coast, and all of a sudden, the week before they're going to go, John Aykroyd is telling everybody that he's got a house in Newport, and he's having a party the same weekend that these girls are going to be camping with their parents. Nobody else showed an interest in it, but the girls did say that they were going to be at the beach and that they were going to go. I think it was purely a means to meet up with the girls that weekend. That plan got foiled because the girls didn't end up going over on Saturday. They ended up going over on Sunday.
This must have been from, it says she was 15. Happy Mother's Day. I couldn't find a card to say what I really wanted to say, and that's I love you. Hope you have a nice Mom's Day. 1977. That was just before she get out. Yeah. Just such a massive coincidence of location and time, and I just always felt that he'd done it. I do feel like he did it. I don't know why. Why? That would be what I'd want to know. Why? I guess he didn't need a reason. I don't know.
We worked with the FBI, who did a background on him. They said he's one of these opportunity abductors, and he will kill as often as he gets an opportunity to do so.
We had that written up on the board, opportunistic. And like with Rashonda and her brother go off to spend the summer with her dad, but Rashonda comes back alone. So for the first time, the brother's no longer in the picture. Within 2 days of Rashonda coming back, John Aykroyd makes up an excuse to be home alone with her during the day. And then with SHEILA and Melissa, he's grooming them, he is stalking them, and he's planning on where he can be alone with them.
The opportunity's there, and he takes it. So how many are really out there? And we really don't know.
At Beverly Beach on their camping trip, Melissa and SHEILA decided they wanted to head back home. Late at night, they called friends from a payphone asking for a ride. When no one could come get them, they said they'd hitchhike back instead. It was the last time anyone ever heard from them.
Would she hitchhike? Yeah, she'd hitchhike. She really didn't have much of an issue about hitchhiking, but for her to be hitchhiking at night and being picked up, no, that wasn't her. She was scared of the dark completely.
SHEILA Swanson was terrified of the dark. What we feel happened is that they left at the crack of dawn the next day and started hitchhiking toward Sweet Home. Aykroyd would have left the Sweet Home ODOT yard about 8 o'clock in the morning, so he would be traveling on to Corvallis and then coming on into Newport. At some point, someone saw an ODOT truck picking up 2 girls at the junction of Highway 20 and the Toledo East Junction. What we do surmise is that at some point, he has the girls in the ODOT truck and he's traveling east towards Sweet Home. ODOT is doing a lot of work on Highway 20, and they have flaggers both on Highway 20 and up Nashville Road. They would notice if he had 2 girls in the truck with him. Where the girls was found off Hayes Creek Road is the last place that you can pull off Highway 20 before you would meet where they were working on the road. So we surmise that he pulled off to wait for the flaggers to be gone. It's probably where the girls were murdered, was in that isolated area off Hayes Creek Road. There are no homes there for quite a way. Not likely that somebody's going to be coming by there.
In the weeks after their disappearance, not many people outside their immediate families showed much concern for SHEILA and Melissa. Police assembled no search parties. The media provided little coverage. In their hardscrabble world, the young women had few protectors and even fewer opportunities to rise above a culture hardwired to look the other way when confronted with marginalized women. A predator like Aykroyd knew that.
I interviewed a co-worker of Aykroyd's, and he was telling me how they'd go out, looking for women and, doing cat calls at them and everything else. And I asked him a little bit about whether he thought he could do something so evil. He wouldn't answer that, but he told me, he said, so what if he did? He said, women have caused all the wars in the world. Women have caused all the problems in the world. What's a few less women? Well, this isn't even our suspect. But he hung around with our suspect.
Once the girls were found, we kind of just forgot about them and moved on. Now I think about it a lot more, like when people die, but then I would be like, oh well. And I know that sounds really bad. And it was, now that I think about it, that was pretty. And none of us went to the funeral. None of us have ever talked to the family. It's like they cease to exist and we just quit talking about them. Now I think, when I think about it, I think I might have been able to prevent it, but I was young and didn't care. I know that sounds hard. Mm-hmm. He was, sorry. Oh, it's okay. It just, if that would have been my girls, would I have wanted somebody to step in? And probably, but I didn't. I was a kid too. I loved it.
When I asked Ron, who's looking out right now, who's speaking for the Melissa and Sheila, really, it was just you, basically.
Yeah, no one else is around, I don't think. Since I was 16 years old, I pretty much made my life completely evolved around the disappearance of my sister and who did it and stuff like that. I went up to where she was found probably 100 times. I've laid down the same spot where she was found. I held a big deal on what happened to my sister because I always promised her, nothing will ever happen to you. I guarantee that, as a promise. And that's just something I can't take back. Would I change that promise? No. It'd be the same promise it was back then as it is today. It's just one that was never completely fulfilled.
Aykroyd's odd schedule and work arrangement at the Sweet Home maintenance yard meant he rarely interacted with his coworkers there. But on one night, when the shop would normally have been empty, he surprised 2 workers who were there on a special shift. At the time, the encounter struck the men as strange, but it would acquire a more sinister meaning later on.
It was probably around 9:30, and I heard the door open, and I go, who in the world's that? Aykroyd, he'd come in through and parked over next to our office in the bay. He started to walk over going through the area, and we noticed he had blood all over his hands and arms. And I go, what the heck happened to you? And he goes, oh, I ran into a deer and I just had to gut him out. Most of the time, if you hit a deer, you just throw it off the road into the ditch and go on. Why would you get a deer in the middle of the night? That didn't make sense. Did not make sense.
The story he told one person was that he gutted the deer for someone else, for another motorist. And they took it. That doesn't add up to you?
No. It don't sound like something Aykroyd would do.
They mentioned it to me the next time I saw him, which I think was the next day. Just brought it up. Wow. Aykroyd came in last night and he was all bloody, and we were kind of going, are you okay? And he said, oh, I butchered a deer for somebody. That was kind of that. Nothing of it. Somewhere down the line, they started talking about these 2 girls being missing from Newport.
And that's kind of when we put 2 and 2 together, like, wait a minute, those girls disappeared about that time he came in with all that blood on his hands.
Both Marvin and Rick came to me and they were just totally freaked out. What if he murdered those girls and that wasn't really deer blood? He had been in Newport, he had been working over there, and then he's all bloody.
It'll probably never leave my mind, just that part of it. Nobody ever asked us.
Aykroyd's name had come up when Sheila and Melissa disappeared. One officer had even sketched out his connections to the girls through who they each knew and where they all lived. But he was being more thoroughly investigated for other crimes. The K. Turner Task Force was closing in, and Aykroyd knew it.
In this interview with Aykroyd, he denies murdering Turner, saying only he visited a friend at Camp Sherman the morning Turner disappeared.
Well, they're talking to the guy that admits that he killed her.
What's his name?
Roger.
Roger.
I think Beck.
Friend of yours?
Not really. He's a friends of mine, but I didn't have nothing to do with it. They got a guy that's admitting that he killed her, bragging about it. In fact, there's a grand jury went on Monday and Tuesday to see if they have enough evidence to get him. But if somebody admits that they killed somebody, that should be enough evidence right there.
At the time he killed Sheila and Melissa, he knew that that was going to come soon. They were actively working both Kay Turner and Rashonda at that time. He was moving property out of a storage unit around that time. So yeah, he knew that he was on short time. Yeah.
Every question in every breath, every exhale leaves a little death. In this way, and a memory that will wander with the ghost of Highway 20. Yeah, I know this road like the back of my hand. Same with the stations on the FM band. Phones and truck stops and fireworks stands. I know this road like the back of my hand.